Yeah. Hey, best friend. Welcome to the podcast today. I can't even begin to tell you how stoked I am right now because one of my guests that you are going to meet today is like probably one of my most favorite people in the world. And you are going to love her as much as I love her. Not only is she like stinking brilliant, but she is also like somebody that you would want to be friends with. So that is why I had to have the Dr. Krista Kirk join us today on the podcast.
Yay.
She, yay! She's a mama and a wife, and she is an assistant professor at Liberty University with me. And we just like live our best life, helping people become counselors and um, chatting about things that are totally not relevant to the field because we're also friends. So I wanted you to get to meet one of my friends. So without further ado, the Krista Kirk
Yay.
is joining us.
Thank you for
Yay.
having me. I'm excited to be here. Honestly, when you asked me to do this, I was like, yeah, sure, let's hang. It'd be fun.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's great to hang. It's like you guys, it's fun to me because our listeners are actually going to get to hear kind of me just have a dialogue with my friend,
Mm.
not just a guest or somebody on the podcast that I'm like, oh, people can really learn from. They can definitely learn from you. But it's like, oh, I'm just
Yeah.
hanging out with my
Like we've
friend.
had these conversations before,
Yep, which is
and
so
we will
great.
again.
For sure. All the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one of the reasons that I asked Krista to be on this podcast with me is because I think she has some really valuable life experience too that our listeners may not fully know what it's like to walk in her shoes or be curious about it. So we're going to talk today a little bit about just being a mama of a kiddo with special needs, and she's also the wife of a pastor, and so there's just these really interesting dynamics that are part of her life on top of being like just an amazing mom and also being a working mom. So like there's all of
Mhm.
these dynamics even to that.
Yeah.
So Krista, I'm just gonna like jump in.
Do it.
What do you wish that people understood about being the parent of a kiddo with special needs that they don't understand? That you really wish they did.
Um, I think daily that the answer to that might change. But overarching, I think one of the things that I struggle with most is actually contradictory to what I'm trying to teach myself to. I think that people who have kids with special needs have a lot of considerations that people who are very close to them want to help with those considerations. And those, trying to say this nicely, but I think
Just tell the truth.
those types of help aren't really helpful, because then I almost feel like I'm caring for other people by having them understand that our life is a struggle. So my son has autism. He is almost 6 in a couple months, and he is really thriving right now when it comes to all the services, and we can talk about that, all the services that are in line for him. He's doing really well. He's still a 6-year-old with autism, though. So we're still potty training a 6-year-old, which he's doing great with, but we're still potty training. He still doesn't understand a lot of vocabulary. So there's like people come over to our house and he will be just butt naked. He doesn't, his thing is if he has slippers on, he
He's
cannot
fresh.
have clothes on. So he finds his slippers. We try to hide them, but sometimes you're like, let the kid live. Um, and he'll just be butt naked. So those are just like playful examples. But I think people are like, Krista, you need to accept the help that people are offering, like babysitting or, you mentioned that I am the wife of a pastor, which I love you said it that way, and not a pastor's wife, because
Mm.
that's very different to me. Um, and like even at church, people are like, "Yeah, we can take him. We can take him." And honestly, I know the heart behind it is to be loving and to be helpful. And at the same time, I wish that people would understand that sometimes the help that I need is honestly just a validation of I know that there are considerations at church that I don't know about that make it impossible for me to watch Liam for you.
Mhm.
Um, for example, Liam will dart, so he can dart into a street. Most people with 6 year olds don't have to worry about their kid darting into the street because there's some level of awareness. And I don't think that so when they offer to help, I'm like, thank you so much. And then they're like, you need to accept help. There is a like a
Sure.
extent to that we do need to accept help. But in that capacity, I think I almost feel like I'm having to care for their hurt feelings that I don't want them to help because I think that it's a safety issue. So I think that's one thing, at least right now in this season of life. I wish people would understand that those additional considerations are
Yeah.
not a helicopter parent trying to just be over controlling. I'm not trying to be over controlling. If I could have more help who would understand that Liam darts into streets, I would love that. But it's just not something that people grasp. And the other side of it, too, is that specifically for autism, it's an invisible disability.
Yeah.
So whenever you're in public, people like I was at Target yesterday or the other day. I guess it was the other day at this point, and Liam's my son. Liam really wanted a Thomas thing, like a Thomas
The
train,
train.
yeah, thing. Like he's super into trains, which I guess is like an autism thing. But anyway, he really wanted this thing, but I had already bought it for like his Easter basket or something. And so I went to go to the checkout and he's crying, which is what he does when he doesn't understand. And the Target employee was like, "Ah, bud, come on." And I was like, "You don't talk to my son like
I will
that."
cut you.
Yeah, he had no idea. He had no idea that he had autism. But, if he's in a wheelchair or his face is deformed in some way that's abnormal to society, then people are much more empathic. So just knowing that there's a story behind everything. I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess there's two
As you're
things.
talking, as you're talking, I'm going, we may have listeners that don't have kiddos with special needs, but I'm also going, I bet that they can relate in the fact that if you've ever been dealing with something in your life, whatever it is, a lot of people, very well meaning, try to give advice, try to offer help or suggestion or whatever it is that they think that you should be doing in order to help. And again, and they're so kind. And at the very same time, it's like, man, you're totally not getting why I'm not allowing you to help, or that I've already tried that, or I've already done that thing. And so I think too, and I know you know this because we've talked about it, where it's like you just kind of have to have this perspective of people where it's like, oh, you just don't even know
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
I remember recently, actually, I say recently, within the past few months, I came across something and I was like, "Ah, man, I don't know if I share this with Krista or
I remember
not."
I was actually going to bring that up. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you tell the story then from your perspective.
Yeah. Well, okay, so backtrack probably 3 years ago. Um we had Liam in a lot of different types of therapies. And when you finally accept, I guess that's the better word, when you finally accept that your child has special needs, as a parent, probably most listeners would agree that you just go full out, what does my kid need, what do I need to do, as soon as you accept it.
Sure.
And we tried everything. We are continuing to try a lot of stuff. Over the years, we found what has been most helpful for him. Anyway, and one of them was about nutrition. And somebody came up to me in the midst of a really, really tough week with Liam. Honestly, it was a horrible week. She's like, you know what? You just need to change his diet. I've heard of people who change their diets and then the next day they just start talking. And she was very well intended with what she said, but I also, again, in her defense, it was a terrible week for us with Liam. But then on top of it, the implication is that I am causing his autism
Mm-hmm.
without her understanding that this
Yep.
kid has 2 meals. He won't eat any food. It's like a sensory thing. He won't eat anything. So we're just trying to get this kid to survive, let alone trying to get him to eat some like organic broccoli or whatever it was that she wanted us to do. Anyway, fast forward like 3 years, one of the things that was really meaningful to me was when you came across whatever it was. And to this day, everybody, I still don't know what it is. Brittany said to me, I came across something. You said something like, I want to be aware that something like, I don't understand everything of it. And I don't know if it would be helpful if I passed it along. I'm going through this training with your
Yep. It was like
certification.
biohacking stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember I felt comfortable with you to say,
Mm-hmm.
thank you for even saying that before doing it. So you had prefaced, I know I don't get it. I came across this thing. Would you be open or interested? I think you said interested in me sharing it. And I just was honest. And I said, honestly, Brittany, no, I don't want to hear
Mm-hmm.
whatever it was that you came across. And maybe someday I will. But I think
Yeah.
in this season, I know what's working. And I really appreciated how you approached that. It wasn't hey, I came across this. I don't know if it'll be helpful, but here you go. It was even a step further of consideration where you were like, I came across this thing. I don't even know if you would want me to send it along. And
Mm-hmm.
that allowed me to say no, which was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think too, like that is so important to be able to say, like to have a friend and to be able with your friend to go, I love you. I know you care about me, but no, it's not helpful for me to hear that. And like our listeners know about, because I talk about it, my journey with infertility, and like I can just remember all of the things that people would say to me, or like, you need to do this, or you need to do that,
Right.
or have you, whatever. And when you're dealing with that, you have researched everything that is in existence.
Yeah.
So it was like knowing it was a way for me to love you, to go, hey, if I come across anything, would you want me to send it to you? And to
Yeah.
be able for you to have the freedom to go, you know what? No,
Yeah.
no. And I think
And
that that's something we need to give our friends, is the
on
ability to
your
be able to say
side of
no.
it too, I'm sure that didn't well, I you can speak to this, but I'm sure it didn't necessarily feel like the most loving thing either, where sometimes people can feel, well, I don't really know how you felt, but it's like jarring when somebody says, no, I don't want your help. And so
Mhm.
just approaching the relationship and the friendship and the conversation, like knowing that a way of loving you might actually result in something that felt jarring to me.
Yeah. I think though I was prepared for you to say no. That's like that was the whole part of asking
Yeah.
was,
Mhm.
if I come across something, would you like me to send it to you?
Mhm.
No.
And
And that like,
you knew the background of it too. So
mhm.
it was a relationship that we had prior.
Yep. And I think even for our listeners to recognize, like, whether you have a friend that's dealing with a kiddo with autism or some other type of special needs or illness or, whatever it is, that just to even ask to say, hey, if I do, would you like to know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, rather than just, hey, if this is helpful. Because you never know what headspace that person is in when you send whatever helpful thing that you think that you're sending.
Yeah. They
Just
might be
like
having
that.
a terrible week.
I remember, again, not on topic, but I just remember people being like, yeah, if you just relax, you'd get pregnant. And I'm like, T minus how long? Like,
Oh
you
my
just chill,
god.
you just chill out and you'll get pregnant. Well, if that was the case, that would have happened, 3, 5, 7, however many years ago, so you just think about that stuff. And again, people don't mean to. Moral of the story. But I'm encouraging our best friends listening to actually, to practice having some awareness with people that that are struggling with things. Like even
Mhm.
if it's divorce or something else, of like, hey, if I come across something I think would be helpful, would you like me to send it to you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely that validation piece. Just a validation of not understanding. I think that is the most powerful to me. When people validate the fact that they will never know, I'm like, thank you for saying that. Yeah.
Yep. Because we don't, can't,
Mhm.
you know, at least I don't have a kiddo with special needs. So that's why I just go, yeah, I don't. I can't. I mean, I could in the future maybe, but I don't and I can't.
Yeah.
And the power in that.
Yeah, and then the other side of it too is what I said earlier, where I do know that there are times when I do have to accept help that is more about my own, not controlling, but my own release of um, knowing that whatever it is might not be best for him, but it might be best for me in that moment, you
Mm.
know? So I
Wow.
might,
What a powerful message. I'm just interrupting you just for a
yeah.
second. What a powerful message to choose. Like moms so often like sacrifice themselves
Mm,
at to their own detriment. And
yeah.
it's being a parent is a sacrifice, but you would say, I need to choose me. Like there's a mom listening to this that she needs to choose herself.
Mm. And it's hard too to make that tangible. We talk about self-care so much in the world, and nobody really understands what that could actually mean or look like.
Sure.
So there are times when I know it's not good. I'll give you a perfect example actually. So Wednesday, we're talking on a Friday. On Wednesday, we had like a snowstorm or something. So Liam had a snow delay, 2 hour snow delay. And Rob and I know that whenever Liam watches, and especially on an iPad, whenever Liam watches a movie, he becomes obsessive on one part of the movie. And so he'll repeat it. It's called scripting, and then it's called stimming. So he'll repeat it over and over, and it completely messes up his day. Like if we know his therapist is coming over, we will not allow him to watch TV or have any sort of like electronic device because we know it'll just mess him up. But on Wednesday, um, Rob had a really important work meeting and there was something going on for my work. And I knew that if I wasn't able to do that thing for work, it was going to mess up the remainder of my week, which included time with my kids. So Rob and I were like, you know what? This isn't good for him. And we need to do what we need to do in that moment. And it did mess up the rest of his day at school. And I was able to get stuff done that I wouldn't have been able to if I took that time off. And then that opened the space for me to have more relaxing time with my husband, with my kids later in the week that would have been, you know, messed up if I hadn't honestly done something that wasn't good for Liam. So, and then there are other times where I'm like, you know what, Rob, I need to go to Target. I need to walk around with my Starbucks and just have time for myself. If you need to put Liam in front of the TV, do it. If you need to put Esther, I have a daughter. If you have to put Esther in front of the TV, do it. Even though I know that it's not the best parent thing to do in that moment, I know that I would be a better mom of an hour away than an hour at home doing something more intensive with them. I don't know. You know.
Yeah. Well, what you're saying though is incredibly important. Women, just by our own feminine nature, tend to be more nurturing, which means that we tend to be more self sacrificing. And then we end up in a place where we're so burnt out, we don't show up well for our kids. I
Mhm.
know I had a day last, was it? It was before we left for Colorado. And I've been on all these hormones and I'm tired and all of this stuff doing infertility treatments. And I had my patience with Talia was insanely low. And that's rare. I think God gifted me in some ways. I have patience where I'm able to like keep my emotions a little bit more level, and I just had none. Like I was
Mm,
just gone, and I was like, okay, I need to. She's wanting me to play with her right now, and I just need to go, like, meditate, get quiet, do something, take care of myself. And women and moms specifically, just like you're talking about, need to choose sometimes what's best for us so we
mhm.
can show up better later.
Yeah, yeah. And um, sometimes, we always joke as moms too that you like hide in the bathroom,
Yep.
um, or wherever your hiding spot is. And there are times when, you think about that secure attachment percentage of whatever, 50 or 60, it's back and forth about what it is. And I think that I am doing a pretty great job of that attachment, like you're talking about. God has gifted me
Totally.
the ability and awareness to do that. And then sometimes I allow myself to have like that 5-10% of just messing up on purpose. Like there are times when and it's not often, but there are times when I'm like, I'm going in my room and I'm locking my door and I have screaming children outside of the room. And I know that they need a big hug from mom right now, but I'm going to allow myself the time to mess up as a mom, but intentionally mess up so that I can
Hmm.
have more bandwidth for whatever that, the rest of the day or whatever it might look like. And allowing that mess up, I think is inevitably something we immediately feel guilty about. But when we reframe that the mess up is intentional so that you can have less mess ups in the
Hmm.
future, true ones, it really does make a big difference. That mom guilt
Dude.
is a little bit less, more or less, because I'm not doing it as
Hmm.
much.
I'm like imagining that somebody listening is like, the type A personalities kind of like us. I mean, we're high achievers. We have had so many conversations about wanting to be perfect,
Yeah.
recognizing that's not a thing, you know, and the mom listening going, what do you mean you let yourself mess up? Are you
Mhm.
day drinking? Like, what is happening? And so, really, just thinking about this concept of I sometimes need to choose myself in order so I can show up better for my children.
Mhm.
And I just love that you brought that up.
One of my backgrounds in counseling is something that I was just in a training for was with something called schema therapy. One schema is called self-sacrifice. And the main premise of self-sacrifice is not that you give of yourself so much where you're burned out. The main premise of self-sacrifice is I'm giving so much of myself, I'm burned out, and I'm resenting the people that I'm actually
Yep.
giving up for. So becoming resentful of my spouse or resentful of my kids or resentful of my job or whatever it is. It's like, they always say that quote where bitterness or resentment is drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It's the same
Yeah.
concept where I'm burning out by giving of myself so much. And then in the end, I'm actually resenting the people that I'm giving of to.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
know, I'm going to say something. You can tell me if it's totally not accurate, but there is a thing that happens with people that are caregivers. And I think the burnout that comes with that, and even more so when you have a kiddo with special needs, because you have Esther who is developing normally, if we can even use normal as a
Mhm.
phrase, and she can communicate to you and tell you the things that she needs, whereas Liam, who is older, can't do that in the same way that Esther can. And so even the need that requires of you to show up at an even
Yeah.
greater level.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
It's very, yes, it's very complex. Yeah.
What is it like for you to sort of have this dual type a momship where you have a kiddo that is developing normally? I'm just going to use that phrase.
Yeah.
And whereas Liam has more special needs. And so you're sort of balancing
Yeah.
these very different needs.
Yeah. And we're still learning. I'm still learning. Obviously, every season brings something different. Um, something I'll just share something recently that we noticed probably maybe 6 to 10 months ago. When you're having to navigate somebody who just constantly doesn't understand what's going on, you try to just make life easier sometimes, and to our detriment too, because if you try to just make things easier for him, for Liam, he's never going to learn. So we have to push against that grain. And like any parent, it's
Sure.
easier to just give the kid cake before dinner so then you don't have to listen. But in the long run, you have to actually hold true to your discipline. um, so it's the same concept, but then when you have the dynamic of siblings who are fighting all the time in life, if I had two normally developing children, I would probably just say, all right, you got it last time. Now it's your turn. But when you have somebody who doesn't understand that concept, we
Mm-hmm.
realized like 10 months ago that a lot of the time we were reasoning like, Esther, it's not a big deal. Just, Esther, it's fine. Just let Liam have your toy. You weren't even playing with it. It's fine. And then we realized she started to become very hyper vigilant of her stuff.
Mm.
Like we were in the car driving home from school one day, and there's this nurse at her school who's like in love with Esther. And so every Friday she gives Esther
Rightfully.
a toy. I that's a whole nother story. That's hilarious.
She's
But
so
it's
precious, though.
this nurse is also very obsessed with my husband. And so I think part of it has to do with her love for Rob, but she's also very open and honest about it because she's like 60, Rob's 40. So she's open and honest about it, and she's just hilarious. She's like, she always talks about my husband being so, what does she call him? I don't even know. Whatever. I think it has to do with my husband too. Anyway, she gave
Rob's a
Esther a
handsome
toy.
guy for our listeners. He's a handsome
He is
he's a handsome
handsome.
guy.
He's a
Mhm.
smoke show.
I
Um,
love that.
so she gives Esther the toy, and Esther's in the back seat, and Esther says, "Can I open it now?" I said, "Babe, I'm driving. As soon as we get home, we'll open the toy." And she starts weeping. And she says, "But Liam's going to take it if we open it at home." And it literally hit me that her mindset is, if I open anything, if I have anything, it has to be available to Liam. And that was
Mm.
the moment when Rob and I said, we need to figure out, we need to be intentional about allowing Esther to have her own identity outside of having a brother with special needs. Sure, certainly it's something that is going to impact her character for the rest of her life to learn how to have empathy for other people. And at the same time, she wasn't born for Liam.
Yeah.
And so we had to give her her own room. We were fortunate enough to have a space that she could have because they were sharing a room at the time. Um, and
Krista lives in New York City for my listeners, so
yeah,
housing is very different there
yeah,
than it is
that's
here.
very fortunate to have a 3 bedroom. Very, very, very fortunate. Um, and and then also we had to be very intentional about defending her. Like she doesn't get to be defended, and that's not fair to her. So there are times where like Rob and I had to have a very honest conversation with each other, and we said we are big fans of never correcting the other parent in front of the kids. So if they mess up
Absolutely.
as a parent, I'm going to correct him, or I'm going to pull him in another room, or I'm going to correct him later, not in front of our children. And so we had a conversation where we were on the same page, and we said, if there's ever a time where one of us is doing that, where we aren't protecting Esther when we should be, we're going to speak it in the moment so that we can change our tune and hold each other accountable. And so we were on the same page about that. And, you know, you have to have conversations about how you do it in a respectful way so your
Yes.
kid doesn't pick it up. So we did that, and it really made such a huge difference. And I think it's been able to open up doors to talk with my kids about the feelings and frustration, or at least I should say, talking with Esther, the feelings and frustrations of saying, "Hey, Liam, come play with me," and him not understanding. Like, what I wouldn't be able to have those conversations of her feeling frustrated and rejected and lonely if she's so worried about protecting herself. And so I think those doors had been open. And again, she's 4, Liam's almost 6. So we're going to learn this as we go, and we're still
Yep.
learning as we go. I think it's all about intentionality, just being very intentional about seeing what Esther needs and then being intentional about actually trying to meet that need.
Well, I mean, you're saying so many important things. I just want to like slow it down just for a second for our listeners of, okay, so in relationship, first of all, you and your partner like need to be able to have conversation that you're not correcting each other in person, in front of your kids, not in person, not correcting each other in front of your children. And also, just like you mentioned, there was necessity for that to happen and to be able to do it respectfully.
Mm,
And even on top of that, it's like, I want to make sure that I see each one of my kids individually, that Esther's identity isn't just the sister of a brother with special needs. And, if you feel okay sharing it, I actually think about that Facebook that you posted about Esther
yeah.
taking up for Liam and how it became really about something that wasn't the intent of the post. Could you talk about that?
Yeah. So I posted a picture of Esther. She was holding a bunch of these $1 bills, and her face was like, super
Lit
excited
up.
about it.
Yeah.
The reason why I posted a little snippet. The reason why we gave her these dollar bills was because we're trying to teach her the value of saving money. So she will, as probably every person who has children listening to this understands, kids don't understand that stuff costs money, right? So
Hmm.
you really want this toy, you spend however many hundreds of dollars on this toy for Christmas, and then a month later it's like sayonara. So we're trying to teach her the value of money. So she really wanted this play kitchen, and play kitchens can be expensive. So she had $9 saved, and the play kitchen she wanted was $120. So we were like, all right, babe, you got to keep going. And we were at the playground. No, Rob was at the playground. I wasn't there. Thank God I wasn't there. When I finish telling this story, every mother is probably like, yep, thank God you weren't there. And Liam was playing in the sandbox, and he saw a toddler take a bunch of sand and then throw it up in the air, like a LeBron James type of thing. And um so he saw the toddler do it, and then he did it. So Liam did it, and Rob was like positioned in it's a huge playground in a place where he could see both kids, because Esther was off playing and Liam was off playing. So he's standing in a position where he could see both of them. So he wasn't super close to Liam to be able to stop him from doing the sand thing again. And um, the parents around Liam were screaming at him and then screaming, "Where's this kid's parent?" So as Rob's going over to get Liam from doing it again, this woman goes and puts her hands on Liam.
Oh my goodness.
And again, any parent and mother is probably like, save up bail money, babe.
I already
Because
feel it in my gut as you're telling this story.
I decided, by the way, the reason why Rob took them to the playground was because I needed quiet and I was tired. And the kids kept saying, "Mommy, come play with me, come play with me." And I was like, "Rob, you got to get them out of the house." And so, in a good partnership, that's what he did. So he's at the playground by himself, and Rob so she went to go grab Liam, and Rob grabs her arm right here to stop her. And of course, all the husbands perk up, and Rob just said, "You never put your hands on another person's kid. You don't know their story. He has nonverbal autism. Get your hand off my kid." After he said that Liam has nonverbal autism, it actually made people more angry. Like, well,
Wow.
then don't bring him around type of angry.
Wow.
So that was the first incident, and Esther saw that. So Esther was like watching this. So Rob takes Liam out of the sandbox. They go and play on something else. And one of Liam's things is he doesn't understand social cues of slides. So this is a good example of there's always a story behind a child's behavior. And so just being aware of that as a parent. And so he doesn't understand social cues. So he's going down the slide and he's standing at the bottom of the slide. And this guy comes over in his face and starts yelling at him to get down so that his son can go down the slide. And Esther goes up to this guy and says, "He's got a boo-boo on his brain. Daddy, get over here. He's got a boo-boo on his brain," to protect Liam because this guy was
Yeah.
yelling at him. And so they come home from the playground, and Rob tells me everything and talks about how proud he is of Esther wanting to protect Liam. And so we were so proud of her that we decided we were going to buy this play kitchen for her. She earned it. She stuck up for the little guy. Granted, it was her brother, but she actually does this in school too, which we're just so proud of her. So we buy her this kitchen, and I post a picture on Facebook, and I say, when parents are bullying your brother and you stick up for them, Dad buys you that play kitchen you've been waiting for. And the whole post became this up in arms about parents bullying a kid with special needs, which in fairness, yeah, if you don't have to think about those things every day, you're like, what do you mean parents are bullying? Meanwhile, me and Rob, we go to the playground and expect it. It is expected. We have to prepare in ways that
Can't
we
even
wouldn't
imagine.
with Esther. And so the post was supposed to be about Esther, but I think one or two people actually said something about Esther and how great it was. And I was honestly posting that to brag about my girl. I was so proud of her. And it became a Liam thing. So I think that it's our inclination as society to just like, I was just listening to a sermon this morning about algorithms on social media and how the algorithm is always to be in tune to something that hurts you or something that angers you, because that's what really gets viral more so. So I think we're just naturally inclined to do stuff like that on social media, but it certainly taught me a lesson too in life that when I want to celebrate my girl, if it has anything to do with Liam, I need to be intentional even about how I communicate what happened, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what so I mean you said so many things and like just that story of I know our listeners are like I mean I felt it in my gut listening to you talk about that, just going I want to jack somebody up on your behalf, right? And those aren't even my little people, although they are like for little precious little people. And so I know that the listeners are feeling that way too, and I'm sure that anybody can imagine or know a time that their kiddo felt some sort of injustice. And so there's that part where as a parent you have to be willing to step in. Like I mean that was so bold of Rob. And there's a part of me too that's like, yeah, New York City culture is also very different than Texas
It's true.
culture, you know. And so there's a part of me that's even listening to that, like the boldness of parents to talk to your children that way, and then for Rod to have to step in and just go absolutely not, and then for parents to get even more angry, like
I
I'm
know.
mind blown about that. And then you're talking about, okay, and I have to go to the playground anticipating my child getting bullied by children or adults.
Mhm.
What in the world?
Yeah.
So there's that part. And then as we were talking about parenting two different children, the way that they're developing. Then you have Esther, who's like did something awesome, but then it becomes about Liam, which really wasn't what it was about also. And I want you to, even as we're all listening to Krista tell us this story of, it is so important for us as parents to be intentional, to be aware of our kids' needs. And I think this sort of thing, if you have multiple children, I think happens at some point where one kid needs more from you than another one.
Sure.
And then we have to make sure, how do I still care for both of you, all of you, while I'm caring for this kid that has special needs, or is making really poor life decisions, or really struggling in school, or really needing extra attention in some way.
Yeah.
And also, this is an imperfect balance.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I said that, and Chris is just like, yeah,
Mhm. Mhm. Yep.
of you
No,
just doing
I
your best.
that's how I think about the newborn stage and how you just click into survival mode. I think that's every day for us. We're just doing what we know we need to do to offer what's needed in the moment. And then we are people of faith. So trusting that God's grace is going to continue to carry us through it. And honestly, we believe that through the means of hardship in life, God uses those things to draw us closer to Him. And so there's a lot of purpose in what we walk through. There's not a lack of hope,
Yeah.
even if Liam doesn't become the CEO of J.P. Morgan and Chase or whatever, and he's needing to have somebody take care of him for the rest of his life. There's not a lack of hope, and that's really what upkeeps me and Rob together. Because marriage for people who have kids with disabilities, I think the statistic is like 80% divorce. It's very, really high. So being
I'll fly
intentional
to
in our
you. I will
relationship
come
too.
to your house in intervention. That will never happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not because and because you and Rob would never. Yeah, I mean, I love Krista and Rob so much because Krista is a counselor and Rob is a pastor, and they also, and she's a professor too. But like, people think about, all right, well, I'm not going to go get help, or I need to, and not, pastors, no one can know that I have problems. Counselor, I have to have it all together. And Krista and Rob actually have a counselor, and they make sure that their marriage is maintained well, and that if stuff comes up, they take care of it. And this is one of the reasons, like, I wish that you and I could talk for a lot longer, actually, but this is one of the reasons that I had you on, is because your life lives out the principles. It's not just, yeah, do this thing, do as I say, not as I do, or I tell you to take care of yourself, but I don't. It's no, sometimes I do, and it's best for me and it's not best for my kids. Or Rob and I make sure that we take care of us so that we can continue to have the kind of marriage that we want to have, and find purpose in things. And you and I have had lots of conversations about suffering and difficulties and pain in life. And one of the things that I will never forget, I actually tell people this, I'm like, I have this friend who I love, and she wasn't just like meeting me in my pain, but she was like, Brittany, I don't know why God is, why you're walking through this in your own life, but what's He teaching you about Himself in it?
Mm.
And it's like, I still think about that often, is like, what's God teaching me in that? And the purpose, in finding the purpose of whatever it is that we're walking through, is so important.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah. It's not just grace being given to deal with it, it's a means of grace to
Yep.
become the person and know and understand deep hope
Hmm.
beyond it.
Yep.
Hmm.
And I think that there's like a process of even becoming in that, because I don't think you just wake up and have all this hope and purpose and going, okay, God, I just really trust you. It's like you get deep in the hole, and then you go, okay, God, you met me there too. Or I trust that you're going to meet me there, even if I don't feel you here right now, and continue to push
Mm.
forward in in the future and going, I know you're going to be with me, and I know there's going to be purpose in this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's this picture that one of Rob's therapists gave him, and I liken it to a lot of things. In context, the therapist was saying to Rob, you need to figure out what weights to pick up. So you go to the gym and you got dumbbells and you put weights on it to make it heavier. And he was saying, there are some weights that you have to pick up and should. The weight of your wife, your kids, your job, the way that you're coming across during a sermon, even. Like, those are certain weights to pick up. And then there's other weights that we put on our dumbbells and it's too heavy. And then we pull a muscle in the process, while at the same time, if you put the dumbbells on that you should be picking up, you're getting stronger and stronger as you're doing it in a healthy way. And I liken that to the process of walking through pain. And if I continue to put weights on myself that I wasn't meant to put on, I'm just going to pull muscles and I'm not going to get stronger, and I'm actually going to be harmful to myself. But as I recognize that sometimes I need to mess up as a mom, sometimes I need to have breaks, and then sometimes there are weights that I need to put on in the moment, and it's going to strengthen my faith, it's going to strengthen my marriage. We all know that therapy is not cheap. So sometimes
No.
you're like, all right, well, maybe we're going to give up this month so that we can see our therapist, because we are just not seeing eye to eye recently. And having to figure out what's best in that moment so that we build that muscle rather than pulling it.
So important. Man. Well, first of all, I just love Krista. So I want to just hang out and just talk to you forever because I just
It's
love you so
easy to
much.
talk to you, Britt. It's very easy.
Yeah. Feeling is so mutual, friend. And I know that our listeners loved listening to you. It's like I even had so many other questions to ask you, and we just kind of did what we did, which is great. People just got to be a part of our best friend conversation, like they're sitting at the table with us having this conversation. And so I'm so grateful. Just there were so many nuggets in the things that you said and shared, and even in the stories. And I just know, I know that everybody listening is going to just feel like excitement and anger and all of the things all at the same time.
Roller
And
coaster.
for sure. And so I'm just so grateful. And I am just telling you, someday when our busy schedules align again, I want to have you back on because there are some other things I think that people really need to hear, especially like just even your perspective. And it's fun too. I was thinking about maybe sometime in the future we'll talk about like theology and psychology, which is kind of fun. The mix and the marry of that.
One of
And
my favorites.
I know that's why you'd be so great to talk about it. So, anyways, thank you so much for being a part of my best friend conversation today, listeners. Krista, I don't think that there's anywhere that people can come find you on social media, so they just had to listen to you. And is there anywhere for me to send them if they want to connect with you more?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not super active on social media, but I can certainly give you I don't even know my handle.
Okay, I'll put it in my show notes. I don't even know my handle. I'll put it in my show notes.
Okay.
Also, if you'll send me, here, I'm going to stop recording. Best friend, being a part of this conversation, and we'll see you next week.